Welcome to Steak Bites, where we carve out space for meaningful conversations that go beyond the grill. I'm Kara Smith, your host and fellow enthusiast for all things tasteful and fulfilling. Today we're joined by Pete Roberts, founder of Origin USA and Jocko Fuel, as well as CEO of Origin USA, a company that's redefining what it means to be American-made. From jiu-jitsu gear to jeans to nutritional products, Pete has built a vertically integrated powerhouse that stands for a beacon of craftsmanship, independence, and reclaiming American supply chains. We'll dive into why American manufacturing matters more than ever, the story behind Origin's rise from a small Maine startup to a national movement, and how values like transparency, grit, and quality apply across industries, from the mat to the ranch to the dinner table. Whether you're building a business, raising beef, or just care about where your stuff comes from, this one's for you. Let's get into it. Welcome, Pete.
Awesome. Thanks for having me. Good introduction.
Yeah, you bet. So let's start from the beginning. What sparked the idea of Origin USA? What'd you see that others didn't?
Yeah, I mean, the idea for Origin actually was started kind of during the recession, um, and I kind of have filed it away. I was obsessed with jiu-jitsu. I was obsessed with training and competing and grappling in jiu-jitsu, and I was running a marketing agency at a time, a little media company up here in Maine. But I always had this and then we were building brands, right? We were working on with brands, building brands, and I always had this vision to reinvent the jiu-jitsu gi. And the recession hit, I was like, I need to find a way to lean into this jiu-jitsu category. Even though it was really small, I was super passionate about it. And so Origin was this name I came up with for the brand because it actually had gi in the name Origin, Origin. And so I used to color block the GI in it, like Origin gi. So that's how it started. And obviously it grew from there tremendously. And a lot has happened since that initial idea, and a lot has changed since it, but it's a perfect name for what we're doing.
Perfect. So with those roots in jiu-jitsu, how does that influence the way you look at business, product creation? I know that we've had some nuanced conversations around that, but I really like the correlation that you make with jiu-jitsu and business and life.
Yeah, I mean, I've been working on a book about it. It'll probably take me another couple of years to actually finish, but the the idea of jiu-jitsu, which is angles, levels, timing, it really lends itself to business. It's like the same kind of ideas that allow you to be good at jiu-jitsu. Like you got to have balance. You got to make sure your timing is right. You've got to understand when there's a lot of pressure on you and how to escape. You got to understand when to tap out, and then you got to understand when to apply pressure. Like, oh, we need to take market share here. We need to apply pressure. You need to know when you need to slow down in jiu-jitsu to get better control of the match, and then when to speed up to advance the match. And so I built my businesses off of jiu-jitsu because I don't have a traditional business education. And so I cut my teeth in business by making a lot of tuition payments. And just like you would learn jiu-jitsu, and of course next year will be 20 years for me in jiu-jitsu. It's like getting a doctorate in strategy, but physical, with the physical component of that. So it's really interesting. It's applied to all facets of business for me. And the mindset of jiu-jitsu, this like learning mindset where you're never going to master it, we're going to become an expert. It's always going to outpace you. It's the same thing business does. As you grow in business, you just start adding zeros, and it tries to outpace you. And so I just use jiu-jitsu to keep control of the monster.
That's fair. That's as a lowly white belt, I realize how much I don't know, but also like how much of kind of an art it is too, which is cool, and
Yeah.
it's ever learning, and the mindset is that's something that I didn't anticipate.
I mean, they call it the gentle art, right? Art suave. And so the gentle art, that's what jujitsu means, is the gentle art. It's not very gentle most of the time. But and that's because two people know the same moves or techniques. But when you know jujitsu and somebody doesn't, you can be very gentle with them without hurting them, and they'll feel like they're drowning, right? So that's what makes it super special.
So something that, we're just talking about business in general and correlating that back to jujitsu. We talk about belt levels. That's a thought process. How do you correlate that in business? Whether it's you need to be a black belt in everything, or maybe you go find a black belt in something, or like how do you work through that thought process as far as business and building a successful business?
It's a good question. I would say a black belt level is a person that has successfully achieved scalable culture and a scalable business model that has used both intuition and data to prove and scale the model, and has been able to onboard team members that know how to drive the business. Where as a founder or a CEO, you can cast a vision and have it lived into without having to do it yourself, to plug into every single business unit and micromanage. So you have a team capable of the scaling of the model and the vision that you have cast. I think that's like a black belt level. I'd say a brown belt level is you still got to get into the weeds on a couple of things. I got to get in and I got to be part of this media team. I got to get in and I got to be part of this operational team, right? So digging into a couple of the big business units and having to be responsible for those would be a brown belt level. I would consider myself probably a brown belt level in a lot of instances. Purple belt, a purple belt on the mats, you can have a really good match against a black belt, and then you can get your butt beat by a really good blue belt, right? And so you're kind of that, you don't quite know the direction yet. You don't quite yet have your product roadmap figured out, but you have some quality people around you doing some pretty awesome things. You're still in the weeds every day, right? You're still learning every day. But blue belt, it would be, I'm pretty much driving this thing, and I have to be part of every conversation all the time. And a white belt is, I'm just an individual with an idea that I don't know if it's going to work out yet or not, but I'm all in on trying to test, that. So that's how I would break it down.
Perfect. So outside of ties to jujitsu, let's get back to the American made concept.
Yeah,
So
sure.
what does that mean to you? Beyond a label. I mean, obviously you've put it into practice in what you're doing, but if you could break that down for a listener of like, what does that mean and why does it matter?
I mean, American made to me, and this is going to surprise you, doesn't mean a whole lot. Doesn't mean a whole lot. Because the term American made has disguised the American consumer of where things actually come from, right? And I'm gonna tell you the opposite side of this and what we like to say. So American made in America means that I can bring in materials from other countries, and I can leverage those materials with a little bit of labor to bring a product to market. American made can mean I'm going to have all this big part, this laborious part of this component. Let's say take a shoe or a boot, for instance, right? We manufacture boots in Maine. And I'm going to have this sent to the Dominican or South America, and I'm going to have this whole boot made, right? Unstructured, but all the heavy labor goes into it. And I'm going to have that all shipped to me, and I'm going to stick a bottom on it, and I'm going to call it American made. All right. So that's what American made is now. What it was once was every component comes from US soil, every fiber, every bit of material, and every bit of labor comes from US soil. That used to be American made. That has shifted over the years through legislation where you can put an American made tag on anything. So we use the term American made, but we follow it up with built by freedom, which we've trademarked. Built by freedom, that's a whole different thing. That means every part of our supply chain was built on freedom, on the ground of freedom, on the grounds of freedom within a free country, right? So there isn't any ideology that has any impact on our supply chain. The fiber is from America, regardless if that's synthetic or organic, whether it's wool or cotton or nylon or polyester. It comes from U.S. soil. The brass in our, in our rivets or buttons, the laces, the textiles themselves, it all, and the labor. So it all comes from U.S. soil. That's true American made, and that's truly built by freedom. So there's really two different things there, and I think the consumer is responsible for finding out, is this made in America thing, is it a true made in America thing, or is it a marketing tactic to get me to purchase? Because the brands are so good at marketing tactics. Mm-hmm. They look over here while we do this thing, or don't look over here while we do this thing, while we do this over here, and really pay attention to this. Hey, we're making this in America while 99% of everything else we do is made in a communist country with forced labor, right? So you got to be discerning about where things come from, and I think that's really important. I think it's on the consumer for that.
There's many parallels with that, and of course the industry we're in with beef. And as you mentioned, some of the policy side, that's exactly what has happened within this space as well. If we want to talk about snack sticks in particular, a lot of 100% grass-fed, grass-finished beef is imported into this country. But then if it changes state, then it can be called a product of USA versus the entire supply chain actually being based in this country.
Dude, I didn't even know that. That's crazy.
Yeah.
Like, I don't want to be eating beef that has been shipped over the Atlantic in a container ship. Like, that makes me feel horrible, right? Well, and so there's an awareness.
Exactly. It's like a consumer awareness. Like, there's so many nuances that technically you can label that product here because it changed state in the USA. So that's crazy. Yeah, some of those loopholes.
It's crazy that's even legal. It shouldn't even be legal.
There are changes in the making, as you mentioned, the policy side of that. What would you say, though, to a consumer, as we talk about some of the nuances we know about our particular industries, but a consumer may not? So how do they get to the bottom of that? Is that just that sheer connection with the brand, or how would you guide somebody?
So ask me in a different way.
So if, a consumer, they may not know some of these nuances, like you say, like they could be sent overseas to do X and Y and still be a product of, American made or a product of America. How would you kind of guide a consumer to get to the bottom of that, to know what they're actually supporting, know if it truly is American made, know the hands that built it, etc.?
Yeah, I mean, there's simple things that says, if you see designed in the USA, if you see made in the USA with globally sourced components, then it's not truly American made. Designed in the USA means like somebody designed the product and they shipped everything over to another foreign country. And in made with globally sourced components means that a little bit of labor happened here, not enough to have a meaningful impact on our communities or supply chains, which is what's really important to me, is that every dollar. So if you took $1, you broke it out, let's say 95 to 99 cents is going outside of the country, whereas like something that's truly made in American soil, 100% of that dollar is staying on U.S. soil and going back into the supply chain.
So with that, it seems like it's going to be a constant balance, for you in particular, staying true to those values, because there's always a pressure to scale and a pressure to take price down, which typically has led to outsourcing a lot of this. How do you balance that? Like, what's the thought process from your perspective?
So you're asking like what? Like how
do you balance just keeping, close the brand, keeping the brand, the missions, the values intact versus the
Sure.
pressure of scale versus the pressure of
Ah,
price. A lot of
yeah,
the
yeah,
things that have led to outsourcing manufacturing.
yeah. Yeah. I mean, doing the right things for the right reasons, which sounds kind of cliche, but it's really important to us. Origin is not in a position where we want to like grow and sell this business. That isn't our goal for Origin. It is 100-year brand. And so I have 100-year plan. That plan will transcend me. And I'm okay with that. And so I don't need to do it really fast. I can do it slow. I can do it as fast as I want or as slow as I want. And so that's a choice that I've made as part of our DNA. Like it's part of our DNA. Our mission is to breathe life back into the dream. And that's going to take some time. It took 30 years for the mills to shut down and the jobs and machinery and knowledge to move overseas. And it's going to probably take a couple of decades for it all to come back. We're 12 years in now, right? So we're like chapter one of a 10 chapter book. And I hope it goes beyond that. But we just finished chapter one and we're in chapter two. And the only pressure we have is the pressure we put on ourselves, right? Last year, we made a massive tuition payment. I tried to double the size of the business, and it absolutely crippled us. Like it was the cost of growth was the juice wasn't worth the squeeze. I screwed up our culture a bit. I brought some wrong people on. I flexed on some of my not values, but like my vision for the brand and what we wanted to do. And so I had to spend the last, 6 months peeling it all back and getting back to baseline and getting the team reset, and then driving forward for 2025, which has been a tremendous year so far. So I think you have to, like in jiu-jitsu, where you like put too much pressure on somebody and all of a sudden you get rolled over and you thought you were going to submit them and like holy cow, now they're on top and they're mounted and you're like, what just happened? Like I experienced that last year with Origin, and it was the first time, and I've gone through some shit with building these brands for sure. Like any entrepreneur, it's turned me gray. But I guess what I'm trying to say is it's really important not to lose sight of what you're trying to do. Are you building a brand to scale, to sell? Are you building a brand to scale, to pass on to the next generation? Are you building a brand to scale, to make a B Corp and turn it over to your employee base and everybody owns it? Like there's so many different things to do, but ultimately you build a company to find some type of freedom, right? To find something you can't find working for somebody else and building somebody else's dream. And I just was one of those people that I don't want to build somebody else's dream. I want to build my dream. I have a lot of purpose, the power of purpose. I have a lot of purpose to do that. I have a lot of reason to do that. And I want more than what could be provided in my community. And I wanted more for my community. So, there's a lot of depth and soul in what we're doing and why we do it. But you control the pace of the match. See, that's the secret to jiu-jitsu is like you're either early on time or you're late. But the real magic is when you're controlling the pace of the match. You're controlling everything. And so being early on time or late doesn't matter because it's like you are the puppet master and your opponent becomes the marionette. And so I try to do that with my brands. I'm the puppet master. So yeah.
Yeah. So we talk about American manufacturing and in your core business, Pete, is I would say a little bit different than us producing beef because we have really, if you want to say a blanket statement, we really don't have a reason to go outside of this country to source beef, unless like we needed additional lean, but we produce so many cattle here so effectively and we do it so well. But there's been such a shift in your industry to where all of that's not all of it, but a high percent has been moved overseas.
Yeah.
For whatever reason. And now, a lot of the new administration trying to be able to bring some of that back. I mean, I've heard some stories. I have a friend that works in the bridal industry, And
Hmm.
the cost of wedding dresses now is pretty wild. Like there is a massive shift because every last one of them is made overseas.
Yeah.
So how do you see that? How do you balance that where you're just at a kind of a different place in manufacturing? Because we could say that us raising cattle and producing beef, like we're manufacturing beef, but we're doing it on American soil because that's where we're raising these cattle, right? And like I don't know, there's just this, like our inputs are already kind of here. Yours, you're
Hmm.
having to bring back. How does
Yeah.
that look so different?
I'll try to answer that the best I can. Like, first of all, the American consumer was tricked. Okay. After World War II, I mean, we have this burgeoning middle class. Our grandparents were first generation Americans. Our great grandparents were mostly immigrants. They were coming from poor countries. They heard about this American dream. They came through Ellis Island. They set up in different areas of New England and the rest of America and tried to live into that American dream, just to have something, anything, right? And I'm a Gen Xer. I heard the stories firsthand from my papa. I'm Greek, right? They were Greek immigrants. They immigrated into Massachusetts, and back then, fighting World War II, liberating Europe, like every bit of everything they used was from American soil. The American factory was the power of America. The American factory was turning out war machines and garments and parachutes and every single thing that our America's military needed to become the dominant power in the world, to literally liberate these countries, right? Without without America and the American kind of spirit and innovation and that rebellious nature, it wouldn't have happened. But after that, as the middle class started to grow, um, we started to consume. And that's okay. We want to consume cars and dishwashers and different new electronic and mechanical devices, and that led its way into clothing. Now, clothing and footwear, like you would buy once and wear till it was in shreds, right? That was the idea, was this thing is getting handmade. And if you look at the old catalogs, even in the big department stores, like those things weren't cheap. To buy like a men's like suit or some men's wear, it wasn't cheap. It for the time, if for the time it was actually expensive, but you're thoughtful about the investment. I'm going to invest in a car. I'm going to invest in a dishwasher. I'm going to invest in this suit, and this is the suit I'm going to wear every day. I'm going to change my shirt, but I'm going to wear this suit every day. And what happened is, I say it's a little bit of the brand's fault, a little bit of Wall Street's fault, a little bit of the government's fault, but these backroom deals, and America's desire to nation build also, right? Like we knew that we had the greatest consumer, the wealthiest consumer, millions of Americans, and so what happened is these companies that are publicly traded, they went to work to strip away this thing that they called a quota, right? And quota was this thing that is, you have this pool of wealth in America, and we'll allow this country to ship so much product into the U.S. You're allowed to ship 1 million pairs of shoes into the U.S. here. You're allowed to ship in 1 million shirts. Well, what happened is the brands teamed up with the federal government and they stripped quota away in the 90s. They took it away, right? So from like the mid 40s, post World War II, we went through Vietnam, and when we were trying to keep like China from going too heavy duty into communism, and so we're like, we really need to give them something. Let's give them the American consumer. Let's strip away quota. Let's let them flood our markets with their cheap and cheerful goods, and we'll kind of keep control over them, because they won't have anything without the American consumer, right? They need the wealth of America. And so we were trying to nation build, yet there's this trickle up effect to where also the markets are great. You know, the brands that are publicly traded are great because there's more consumption, more money coming into the American economy. But over time, what happens is that you're funding your demise. So by consuming and trying to look at consumption as a way to get your dopamine, you're funding your demise. You're funding the crippling of your factories, the destruction of the community. That factories were our communities. You're stripping purpose out, right? Like you're pulling the power of purpose away. It's not a melting pot anymore. So you're separating people as you strip them out of the factories. And you're pulling the knowledge away also. So the thing that you knew how to do is now disappearing. And you're simply now have an individual who becomes a consumer, and you have trained them like a rat in a cage to eat. And what they eat is these cheap goods coming from China, and your money flows overseas. And I just want you to know, like, I've been saying this forever. You know, like we now have a, and I'm like very center. Like I don't follow politics. I don't watch TV. I haven't had the news in my house for almost 20 years. So I'm politically agnostic, but I want the best for America. And I want the best for why my great grandparents took the risk of coming over to Ellis Island to build a better life. Like that's really important to me that we don't lose sight of that. And I have a responsibility to do that also. So that's what's important to me, and I've been preaching it, and I'll continue preaching it. But we have got to change as consumers. We have to stop and break the cycle. It's like breaking the cycle of a drug addict or an alcoholic. If you don't call it out and say this has to change, it's like we need to rehab a nation, and we have to wean them off of this sick overconsumption and supply chain, and get them back to thinking about, I'm going to buy something, I'm going to buy it once, and it's going to be quality, and I'm going to use this thing for years. And so that's going to take time. It's going to take time, effort, awareness, right? I've got to tell 90 million people. We got to find a way to do that, and it'll slowly start to change. But I got 100 years to do it.
So. And I love the way you tell stories, Pete. That's wonderful, and that totally relates to at the heart of Americans. If we go back and look at our history, two things come to mind. I still remember during COVID when we were back ordered for 8 months because people didn't know where their food was going to come from because they went to the store and it wasn't there. So we had not seen that as a generation. My grandparents probably was the last generation that had that kind of experience, and seeing this new generation have that and go back to be like, man, I can't do a whole lot unless I'm fed. And we think about the superpowers and the way they've come about in this country. It comes from being able to be fed too. We get to make these choices as consumers and entrepreneurs and or whatever choice you have, because you're not worried about where your next meal is coming from. And that's something that I didn't put a whole lot of stock into until, we started down this road of Colorado craft beef, of we've lost that connection back to where our food comes from, back to the ranch, back to the farm. And we will lose that opportunity to continue to be a superpower if we can't feed ourselves. Yeah. And that's something that I take quite personally. But I think that's pretty timely to be able to make this tie, and ask you the question of like, how important is that food that you're fueling, that it matches those same values, that you've talked about with creating origin and doing things differently.
I mean, that's what I'm copying. Like I'm copying the farm to table model, right? So when I was growing up, like anybody who was like farm to table, we called them like granolas or crunchy, like they were like crunchy granolas. Are like, oh, I want to know where my food comes from. It's like, I'm just going to go to McDonald's, right? Like it's cheap and easy. And they would have like the farm stands in town, and all these people would be there with their vegetables and everything. That's all I consume. I want to know where all my food comes from. I was not an early adopter of this philosophy that you should know where your food comes from, because I was raised on the food pyramid where you trusted the government what to eat, right? In that trust with the government has been broken over time, in lots of different administrations. Whether we're out there searching for weapons of mass destruction, or now we have this upside down pyramid that you should be eating, like sugar cereal for breakfast. Like, that's the best thing for you. It's broken. Luckily, we have a lot of independent sources with strong voices out there through podcasts and independent, I guess just folks who are revealing the truth to the next generation, and that generation is super smart. But I wasn't growing up. I wasn't that smart. I didn't have access to TV. I had a little TV with rabbit ears, and I could get one or two channels growing up until I moved out of the house when I was, 18 years old. So that's all I knew. Like, I grew up out in the boonies. I didn't have a lot of exposure to culture. I had never really traveled out of New England. And so I didn't understand it. The more I was able to learn and to grow, and travel and talk and experience, I gained knowledge, experiential knowledge, not somebody telling me something, but through my own experiences. I was like, this is wrong. Like, this is wrong. Like, the box they built is wrong. And it's driven through lobbying and policymakers, and it all has to do with predatory capitalism, right? It's the predatory form of capitalism, not the conscious, ethical form of capitalism that I think our founding fathers were that was what was valuable to them, right? It's also about your neighbor. It's not just about you and your shareholders and how much you can take, right? And so that switched somehow. Greed is good? No, greed is not good. Greed is evil. So I think we have a responsibility to shift that. But understanding the farm to table thing for me was like, why can't we do that with footwear and apparel? The things we eat, let's do it with that, and then the things we wear, let's find a way to do it with that also. And so I'm just copying the model in my own way, and trying to remember, why we have what we have and have the opportunity to do this, and not abandon the past, but to capture the soul of the past, as we move forward.
Yeah, that's you're able to eloquently put that in a lot of ways and make those correlations that sometimes I'm not sure we're able to do. Thinking about history, because if we don't learn about history, it has a tendency to repeat itself.
100%.
So how do we continue to make that difference? I mean, outside of just seeing that lack of connection from, ranch to table, I hadn't envisioned doing what we're doing now with Colorado craft beef and really having that direct line to a consumer. But I realized that we don't just raise cattle in the American West. We produce beef to nourish bodies and minds. Like, that's the bigger mission. And if we lose sight of that and we move more like, American manufacturing had moved to it just being a widget, and then all of a sudden you're able to, your production is all overseas and we no longer can feed our people.
Yeah.
That wasn't a place that I wanted to be. That wasn't a place that I wanted for my kids. And I was like, it's kind of like Ryan Mannion's comment, like, if not me, then who? Which is very, that's definitely a different concept. But also, like, I looked around and I'm like, well, what else do we do? You complain about it or you do something about it. I think those are probably the two options.
Yeah, exactly. And complaining gets you nowhere, and action is the only way to facilitate change, or to take a risk on facilitating change. I actually didn't eat red meat before I started buying CCB.
Really?
I, and we spend, thousands of dollars with CCB, and it spoiled me because I go to the best steakhouses in America, and it doesn't even compare. Actually, we ate it last night, ate it the night before. My son had a ribeye last night. But I didn't eat red meat, but maybe once a quarter. And when I started, eating CCB, like knowing where it came from and the quality of the product, like now I eat red meat multiple times a week, which just started within the last 2 years. So until 44 years old, I didn't eat red meat. It was just fish and chicken, and I'm Mediterranean, right? So more of a Mediterranean diet.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and the quality, like eating red meat for me, like from the grocery store, like it just didn't sit well with me. It didn't make me feel good, but it is a completely different experience when I consume your product. It's like putting on a pair of Origin jeans for the first time, or a pair of boots. Like where it came from, like you're bought into it, and you're part of building something and rebuilding something, which is really important. And I think that also is part of us, losing our soul a little bit, is we used to know where the things came from and who was behind it, and it used to mean something. And I think that knowing you're part of building something and part of like this bigger machine mission, shared consciousness, it's a big deal. And it's going to continue to be a big deal, especially as this freaking AI thing becomes sentient, which is really scary, right? It's like people are going to want to go back to the land. They're going to want to go back to, what human hands in daylight have made and built, and so I just think what you guys are doing is tremendous.
Well, thank you.
Sure.
That's being able to have you as part of the team too, Pete, means the world. You shared a little bit about the product, but outside of that, like what drew you to CCB? Like what was kind of as you mentioned, maybe that shared mission, shared vision, but some of the other things. Is there anything else you wanted to highlight?
Um, I there's a reflection of my personal, Amanda and I are, we built something from nothing. So I like the husband and wife entrepreneur. I like the tension and the joy of seeing that. It's just different when it's like a family doing something. Like they're gonna have to really get to work. They're gonna have those deep discussions that night, and those midday conversations, and they're going to have to come to resolution. And normally when there's like healthy tension and healthy conversation, like the best results happen, right? And so that drew me to you guys, was just that, as a husband and wife team driving the business, which was super relatable to me, knowing the trials you're going to go through. Like I wish I could inject into you everything I've gone through, um, but that experience and that wisdom you're going to gain is going to be, only you can do that. Nobody can like give you that. You have to go through the motions to figure it out. And I knew that was going to happen. And I know it's going to happen a lot more than it's going to happen. So that drew me to you guys.
Very cool.
Yeah.
So, what else do you hope that people understand about companies like what we're doing with CCB, Origin, well, doing things the hard way? What do you wish people knew more about?
Oh, I I don't know. I mean, it's kind of a tricky question, because I'm I've come to the realization that I'm unrelatable. Um, I said to my team recently, we had to make a strategic shift in the Origin business, and I'm looking at making a strategic shift in the nutritional business, Jocko Fuel. I had to say to my team recently, hey guys, I like there's this monster, and at one point it was like this little guy, and you could take him for walks, and you could feed him scraps off the table, and and he started to grow a little bit, and he was on a chain, and that's like your brand. It's your business. It's like a little monster. And at the beginning you can kind of feed it whatever you think it should eat. Like it can't talk to you yet. It doesn't have a language. And so you're feeding this thing, and over time, it man, it just bit me. Shit, bit me in the leg. Ouch. That's painful. Don't do that again. Naughty monster, right? Over time, that monster becomes so big. It eats time, capital, and capacity at such a rate. If you don't know the feeding windows and what to feed it, what diet, I look at like as macros, like you got to feed it its carbs, you got to feed it its proteins, and you got to feed it its fats, and its diet changes over time. And if you don't feed it what it needs when it needs it, it is going to eat you. It's not going to bite you. It's going to eat you. And I think that people don't understand because they only see what you have, right? Like, oh, that guy gets to fly around in a private jet, or they get to do all these things. Like it would eat most people. 99.999% of the population, like like you don't even want to enter the room. There's so much. It's so volatile at times, right? And the thing is its environment's changing at the same time. The environment is the marketplace, and so it's not summer all the time, right? And the seasons are unpredictable. You can go from summer to winter without fall, right? You can go you can be in sunny Florida, and then all of a sudden you're in the Antarctic, but you don't have your cold weather gear, right? And it can happen like in a moment. And so I think when I was talking about the white, blue, purple, brown, black belts, when you're a brown belt in business, and you know what the monster needs to eat, and you're putting it on a nice diet for growth. You don't want this thing to get fat. Ever heard the saying, pigs get fat and hogs get slaughtered? Like if you let it become a hog, it's going to get slaughtered. It's going to eat too much too fast. They call that mass entry. Mass entry into a market, you ate too much too fast, too much market share, too much capital, too much capacity, then you're going to get slaughtered. Mass entry, mass exit, right? Look at the brand Prime. Prime came on the scenes, this hydration drink. You couldn't buy them for less than $15 because there's all the rage amongst the young kids. Now they're like two for $1. Right? That's mass entry, mass exit. They should have taken their $1 billion offer to sell the company, but they got a little bit greedy, I think. So I think what I want people to know is, as an early stage startup, it's fun, and it hits you. It hits like you get that dopamine, endorphins. Like, this is cool. I got a logo. Look at this product. Look at this product packaging. Oh, we got consumers, right? But the monster is cute, and it can still sit on your lap, and you can still pet it, and eventually it's gonna want to turn on you. And so it wants to turn on you every day. Every day it's looking at you. Every day it's growling at you. Every day there's a little bit of saliva dripping out of its mouth. And if you feed it what it needs, it'll protect you. It'll go and eat other things. If you feed it what it needs, it's going to fight for you, and it's going to do what you need it to do for you and your team and your family and your community. And that transition is really hard. It's really hard to make. And that's like the way I talk to my team, right? So I'm telling you something that I would tell my team. And then I would go into something like, so we've got to make sure that we're not, turning off after this fake 5-day week. You've got to be on all the time. You've got to be thinking about this all the time, because its diet is your capacity, and you're not going to have a work-life balance. Like if you're going to work here, you're not going to have work-life balance. So think about that before joining the team. That's the best I can explain it.
Love that correlation with your team. What would you say to our consumers? Yeah, I think you've made a great, story compilation of a lot of what you've talked about. If you were to close out of like, hey, what can you tell your common consumer about what you're building, the different things that we're standing on. A lot of the story about America and where we are now. Like, what advice would you give to them?
Mm. For from origin perspective, you're asking
In
like
general, let's just think about
in
like a
general.
common consumer, that maybe
Yeah,
isn't giving the due thought to where things come from,
yeah.
and maybe they are, but just in general, what would we say to the common American consumer?
I would say that individual sustenance is important, um, but there's a difference between sustenance and overfeeding. America is increasingly becoming overweight, right? Physically overweight. And so that representation of the unhealthy lifestyle, physical lifestyle, is only an outward expression of of the mindset of America of overconsumption. We are consumers and we consume. We're feeding until we're fat. We're buying until we're into our credit cards, and we're watching the scroll, and so it's consuming our time and our minds and our energy. And I just think that we need to become aware of that, where we're spending our time and capital. It's the same thing you would feed the monster: time, capital, capacity, right? So how much time are you going to spend doing something? How much money you're going to invest in that thing, and how much capacity are you gonna give to it in your mind? Like, and I want the consumer to know that you have been lied to and you have been tricked. Like, is the greatest, um what is the saying? The the greatest is the saying, is it the greatest? You might have to help me with this, that the devil never existed. What is that saying? The
It's like the
greatest,
greatest lie or something.
yeah, the greatest lie. Is that what it is?
I don't know the exact. Let's see if
Yeah.
I can find it.
You have to look it up for you. You're gonna look it up?
We'll find it.
Yeah, cool. I wish I had the saying off the top of my head. But the greatest lie to the American consumer is that you need to buy more and that we can't make things here. Like, that's the greatest lie in the past 30 years to the American consumer, that you need to buy and spend more and that we can't make things here anymore. Um, and I think that needs to change. And I think it is changing slowly. I'd like to see it more rapidly, but in due time, it's gonna happen.
So it says it's basically three pronged. If this is
Okay.
what you're thinking of, Pete, is the great lie of the American consumer is that bigger and better things will make you happy.
Mm,
Advertising convinces consumers to buy, and
mm,
spending money is good for the economy. Oh, sorry, and Americans are born consumers.
yeah. Yeah. I think that's really bad.
Yeah. Yeah. When we start thinking about kind of where we've come from and where we are, it is eye opening. I'm earlier in the conversation you were talking about going other places and seeing how different people do different things and learning from those experiences. That was eye opening for me too. I
Yeah.
spent a summer in Germany, and I lived with a family that had spent time in America. She was a DVM. She had her vet degree. She'd done an internship here, and I was living with them the entire summer. I was helping them learn how to rope and ride and do things that we do in the American West because they just didn't have the opportunity to do it. And I remember asking Guta, I was like, "What do you miss the most about America?" And she looked at me and she's like, "A good ribeye steak." I
Hmm.
was like, I didn't see that one coming. Like, that's
Yeah.
out of all things. It's just wild that we, if we don't think about some of the things, where it comes from, different
Yeah.
experiences, when we take all of those pieces of the puzzle into account and really think about where we are currently in America, where we came from, and I think most importantly, like where we're going,
Yeah.
which I'd love for you to share maybe some final thoughts on that, Pete, to wrap up the conversation of like, where do you think we're going? Maybe whether it's for origin or just, America as a whole.
Yeah, I think there's going to be an awakening and a bit of a renaissance, a modern day renaissance. I see it in my own kids. Like I didn't raise them. I didn't raise my own kids. We never talked politics in my house ever, never once, never even brought it up. So my daughter ended up very conservative. Not sure why. My son, I think, is more center, very center. Uh, and it's really interesting. Now, I did raise them on the land. They both hunted. They both harvested their own animals. If they killed it, they had to eat it. My son trapped. He trapped beavers and all that stuff. They did work in the factory. I made them work in the factory, right? So they were responsible for that. Funny enough, they have found their own paths, and they both are in college, right? At the same time, they found their own paths and their own truths, and neither of them turned to traditional news media for those truths. Neither of them. I remember my son saying in high school, he's like, "Hey, Dad, you know something?" I was like, "What?" He's like, "My generation is going to be the most conservative generation that there's ever been." I said, "How do you even know what that word means, conservative?" He's like, "Oh, I listen to this podcast. I watch this person on YouTube. They get all their information from YouTube, by the way." He's like, "Well, my generation they understand who's truthful and who's not. Like the people who are truthful are like backing it up with like facts, and the people who aren't, they're all like emotion and it's what they think or whatever." So it was almost like, whoa, what's going on here? You have these young kids who are coming up with their own ideas on their own ideas. I think that's really important, is their own ideas. They're uninfluenced. These kids are so not influenced by politicians, by and I don't even think he voted because he didn't like either candidate.
Mm-hmm.
I don't even think he voted. I don't think he wanted to vote for either candidate in this last election. Um, but it just was, it's really interesting seeing them because they were both born in the early 2000s. They're 22, almost 23, and one's almost 20, and so they were born at a really interesting time where the information age has come to life. You've got AI, and then you've got this decline of traditional news media, CNN, Fox News, and this increase in independent media, and where they were drawn to was just really interesting. And that's my long way of saying that I think there's some real hope for the future because these kids are going to keep us honest. That's the most important thing, is these kids are going to keep all of us honest, and they will tear you apart if they'll poke holes and they'll tear you apart if they find any lies or or propaganda. They're not having it. They're not having it. And so that's a really good thing for CCP. And it's a really good thing for Origin because they're going to go back to the source.
Mm-hmm.
Right? There's this big movement of like thrifting. Why are kids wanting to thrift? Why are they wanting the old stuff? Like my son walked through my office yesterday and he's like, "Hey, I'm following Dr. Mike, on YouTube." And I was like, "How do you know Dr. Mike?" Like I think he's a jiu-jitsu guy. He's like, "Yeah, I'm using his program, yada, yada, yada." Like they want to be healthy. Alcohol consumption is way down. It's like down by like 70%. So they're thinking about their health and wellness, things we don't think about until we're like in our 40s, right? And we're like falling apart. They're already thinking about life, health, wellness, longevity, future state, finances, where things come from, what they're putting on their body, what they're like, they're thinking about all of it. And so I think they're going to spearhead the tip of the spear for this renaissance. I think the Gen Xers have the knowledge from our grandparents that fought in World War II, first generation Americans. We have the knowledge because we heard the stories, but I think we have set them up to kind of execute this awakening. And a lot of them are turning back to God also, which I think is a tremendous thing. A lot of them are like, I want to know what this is all about, this spirituality thing. So I think that's also really important, and they're finding their own way through that. So yeah, I'm very bullish on the future.
That's inspiring and exciting, especially having two young kiddos. Because especially in the ag community, a lot of times we have some negativity around the future of like, oh my gosh, look how much it's changed. What are we going to do? All of these types of things. And I mean, I share in your thoughts of like, this actually is really an exciting time. And being able to raise kids differently. And it's inspiring for me to see, you and Amanda being able to do that, 30 years of marriage and raising incredible kids that are going to change the future and continue to set that up for my kids too, when they get older, and foster that thought, foster the entrepreneurship, continue with the American values and the American dream, and not fuel it with some of the per se lies that have been a part of that. So
definitely.
Yeah. Definitely. Thanks for sharing that, Pete.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, Pete, where can our listeners find you as we're gonna wrap up?
Yeah, I mean, I'm on Instagram, where I post a lot of different things. It's Pete.origin on Instagram. And then Origin USA on Instagram, Jocko Fuel on Instagram, and then originusa.com on web, and jockofuel.com on web. So
awesome.
Pretty easy.
Yeah. So as we wrap up today's episode, I want to thank Pete Roberts for not just sharing his story, but a powerful reminder of what it means to build something that lasts, something that actually matters. His commitment to craftsmanship, transparency, and reclaiming American supply chains is a message that we all can take to heart. If today's conversation resonated with you, be sure to follow Pete, support the American mission of manufacturing through Origin USA. Every stitch, supplement, and step they take is proof that doing it right is still worth it. Don't forget to subscribe to Steak Bites for more conversations that fuel your mind and your legacy. Stay inspired, stay intentional, and keep fueling your legacy. Thanks for tuning in. Till next time.